Well, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. We're super excited to have Pam Piligian here, who's the SVP and CMO of Navy Federal Credit Union. Pam, do us a favor and start us off by talking a bit about your background, kind of where you got your start and where you are today and what's going on.
Thanks, Chris, and it's great to be here. I have been here at Navy Federal for 8 years now, and this is my first client side gig. I'm kind of an agency geek by training. Started my career at DDB in San Francisco, and then went to New York for a tour of duty. At that time, it really was a tour of duty because all the best work was happening there, and had a great opportunity to work on packaged goods with Nabisco and Raid, and so good experience. Went to Boston, and worked at an agency, Ingalls, Quinn& Johnson, that doesn't exist anymore, and then went to Atlanta, to work at BBDO, and then after that went to a creative boutique, and then went to an independent agency, Fitzgerald and Company, for most of my career. I know it sounds like I was in the witness protection program or running from the law either way with all those different, but traditionally it was that you moved to get a better assignment, and really to move up required moving. So that's what's behind a lot of that. So I was at Fitzgerald for 2 decades and really worked on a vast array of clients, from packaged goods, which was really my experience before coming there, to services, to education campaigns, Quikrete Concrete, Durex condoms. So a little bit of very, very diverse offering, and really enjoyed the experience there. But I had an opportunity to come to Navy Federal Credit Union. Navy was my client. So I knew the culture and I knew the brand, and really just excited about the opportunity. So came here 8 years ago, and and I'm our very first CMO. Navy Federal is 92 years old, and I'm our first CMO. So hopefully I don't ruin it for those behind me.
I love that, Pam. That's what a great journey. And I love when agency folks have such a strong relationship with the client teams and the client brand that they invite you over. I've had that privilege as well in my journey, and I feel like it was destiny that we would get to know each other a bit because while I never worked at Ingalls, I worked at Arnold, which became the Ingalls group kind of moved into Arnold, and as the nesting dolls of agency life kind of perpetuates. And you worked on Ocean Spray, which was there
Hmm.
when I was there, and what a great brand and a great enduring campaign over time. Um, and you're also a chief founding member for the DC practice, isn't that right?
It is, and I will tell you one of the things, Chris, that I missed moving from a market. I had been in Atlanta for a number of years, actually decades, and you realize you have I had a very rich professional network, and then I moved here to DC, and I didn't know anybody besides my individual teammates and peers here at the credit union. And so, Chief was already founded, did not have a DC chapter. And so I was one of the co founders here with our inaugural class. And it really was about getting professional women together and in cohorts, and really to learn and grow together. And while I did it really to network and meet people, and I'm really glad I did. It's interesting. I realized too how different DC is. There's a lot of the first cohort. There were a lot of attorneys and people that were lobbying on the Hill, and so great to be with those women, and learn together and learn more about really that part of the business, which I had not been exposed to, not being in DC previously. So.
Well, that's a great. I admire the chief group and the organization and the way that it brings people together. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I imagine that the chief platform has given you that opportunity to in some ways I'll connect the dots here in a second. So the question is, um, on your journey, who are some of the people that were like mentors or advisors or people that gave you great advice? And then is along that journey as well, is there any advice that you look back on and go, boy, that was just not as good as it was intended? I mean, it was good intentions, but didn't land well, and or it hasn't aged well. Any stories along those lines?
Definitely to both. I will tell you, I'm probably one of those, maybe I'm just more needy. I never had a single mentor. I had people that were on almost like a council. And I will tell you, I worked for Dave Fitzgerald, Lisa Galani for, as I mentioned, decades. The previous CMO here, Mary McDuffie. And I've been blessed throughout my career to work with just some amazing people who always cared about the work, but also cared about individuals. And I think from them, I always learned things about the business, but I also learned about the power of a team. Very little do we do in marketing or advertising that you do by yourself. So for me, it really has always been about how do you have those voices in your career and life that can help you and guide you and give you the good advice. I love the question on bad advice. I have to tell you, one I received early on, which isn't from any of those individuals I mentioned, was somebody told me early on, you care too much. And I thought that was, at first you go home and you're like, oh my goodness, aren't you supposed to care? And I grew later to have some perspective on that. Maybe I was showing too much passion or intensity on something, but I really feel you can't care too much because if you don't care enough, the work doesn't matter, the people don't matter, the mission doesn't matter. So my worst advice really was that you care too much. And I'm like, fine, I care too much. And I hope people still say that about me, that sometimes I care too much. Much rather that than doesn't care enough.
Yeah. One of the great strategists I've worked with along my journey said to me, argue about the ideas like crazy, like argue with such passion, but never ever argue about people. And I thought, what a great way of putting it, right? It's not, this energy, this, you know, passion is about the work and the impact that we're trying to make, not about you and your opinion or your perspective. It's never about that. It's, how do we, do the best work we possibly can. And it's amazing how sometimes we can get in our own head about that. It's amazing how, the process, and a lot of people that don't, get deeply involved in it, the process is messy. So I'm curious, one of the beyond the brief is just that. It's a conversation about the insights and little magical tidbits that don't necessarily hit the brief or aren't on the plan, they aren't written down, but they come to light in some way, shape, or form on our process, that, that messy process of kind of getting to the work that makes the impact that we hope. Do you have any stories where you found that nugget or that kernel that kind of sparked a level of impact that wasn't necessarily on the brief?
I'll give you an example that's very tactical, but to me, it's one of those that's just still very, very obvious. I worked on Quikrete for a number of years, or really more than a decade there too. And really, for Quikrete, packaged concrete, they're the market leader, sold in Lowe's Depot as well as the independent stores. And the real way they grow their business with the DIY consumer is by selling projects. You buy more concrete because you want a walkway, you want this, you want that. And I have to tell you, coming back from church one Sunday morning in Atlanta, coming back into my neighborhood, I see the driveways that have the New York Times. The New York Times then was all delivered in a blue bag. And as I came home and I'm going down the hill, I'm thinking differently about the people who are like, oh, I never knew the Perkins were readers of the New York Times. I never knew these people were, and all because I saw the blue bag. But what it made me think about, given I had worked on Quick Read at that point, is what a better time when you have somebody looking at their driveway. And this would be a great time to talk to them about, and most driveways are made out of concrete, the next project. So, and needless to say, that wasn't in the plan. It wasn't in the budget. It's hard to do that kind of idea nationally. So we picked some markets to test it where we printed on the newspaper bags about their next project, and really had some great success for that. And I tell that story just because I think part of it is being open to an idea. And the ideas can come from anywhere. I really wasn't thinking about Quikrete that morning as I'm coming back from church, but I did think about them as I saw these blue bags on their product, meaning this concrete. Like, how could we plant a little bit of inspiration for all those people that are going out to get their newspapers on Sunday mornings? So I think for all of us, it's still about where can you get out new ideas? Where can you walk a mile in members' shoes? I say member because I'm here at Navy Federal, which is a credit union, and we're the largest credit union with 14.8 million members. And that said, a credit union is all about members versus customers. But part of that is getting people to think about what do our members need, and the needs are big across a set that big, and everybody from an 18-year-old who's shown up to serve. Um, so very young, starting out their career to somebody who's an established veteran. So one of the things we do at Navy Federal that I think is really good for the briefs and the work and making sure we're all reminding on who we're talking to is each one of the management council teams spends time each quarter in a branch or at the call center. And I will tell you, sitting side by side with a call center operator, first of all, I have so much respect for the front line, because if you work in a service brand, let's face it, the marketing is often about that service. It's not like a packaged good where we made the product and we just give it to you. Like a service is that experience. It's like, how did we make you feel? Did you feel valued? How you were treated? And sitting there with this call center rep who just in an hour, we answer about 1 million calls every week. So as you can imagine, they're sitting there and the calls are vast, as are the needs. And I will tell you that practice really does help with the briefs, because not only do you hear it from the members' language, but you also hear the problems and their solutions and their celebrations from their mind. So part of my job here is making sure we keep that alive, and that when people see the work or get some communication from us, they feel like and they know it was from us and that they're part of us, because we are all one big us, the members and the team members, holistically.
I commend you in doing that. A lot of organizations don't even have a mechanism like they have commercial KPIs that they obsess about, but they have very few, if any, customer experience KPIs. And what a missed opportunity. I mean, if and we as a agency are advising our clients all the time, the best way to improve your commercial KPIs is by having really high, customer experience KPIs. And it, you know, it, everybody's obsessing about like lower funnel data and optimization and all that stuff. Yes, let's do those too. But if you don't actually see it, and a lot of the mechanisms for that, you can't communicate on a report or a summary the real experience of a frontline person using technology or using, a process, and the customer's experience in that process. I just went through that. I won't name the bank I bank with, but my wife and I just opened a business account for her company, and it took an hour and 40 minutes. I wanted to slip my wrist. I literally said to the guy, I said, I know this is not your issue, but please tell anybody that will listen that this should be 15 minutes at most. And especially when we have 7 other accounts with you, like, 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 why is this so hard? Uh, but yeah, I commend you in having that frontline exposure and experience. It just grounds everybody in the reality of what you're doing and the difference you can make on a simple level, and find those clues. And it also, as a marketer, I'm sure you experience it where the folks that go and have those experiences come back with opportunities to improve things, and they see it for what it really is, versus you always having to be the one saying, hey, this form is terrible, or this process is terrible, or we're not helping our team, make this easy for customers. That that's hard for marketers to have to go through, and I'm sure in your journey, you've seen lots of instances where you had to be the advocate, and the folks that were technically approvers or guides for that stuff weren't necessarily in touch with it, and often felt it was an expense, unnecessary expense to do those things that would improve the customer experience. Um,
You are so right, Chris. We could be in the Mutual Admiration Society because I will tell you one of the metrics that matter. First of all, there's 22,000 employees at Navy Federal. And if our metrics that matter were all about digital lower performance metrics, there's no way the front line would care. They're not involved in that. They're just make it happen. So no surprise when you think about, as I mentioned, we are very much a service brand. We talk about earning trust. It's not given, it's earned. So because of that, our member satisfaction is it's we have three metrics that matter that we really operationalize around. Everybody in the company knows what those are. One of those and a third of your bonus, which everybody that works at Navy Federal as a full-time employee is eligible for a bonus. That's tied to member satisfaction. And what I love about that is I can be in a branch, I can be at the call center, I can be talking to a UX designer, and they know what member satisfaction was last month, and they know what it is this month. And that makes people care. I am blessed by, which is part of why I'm here, because purpose matters and being at a nonprofit. Credit union is a nonprofit, giving the money back to our members. And it's easy to do that part, but operational financial metrics are rarely motivating. But as soon as we tell people that this is about member satisfaction and we're linking people's bonuses to it, everybody knows what it is and they understand and they work to understand more about what drives it. So that makes our job in marketing so much easier because if we were just promoting service and people didn't have a motivation to do it, that would be a problem. It also sometimes impacts the metrics that you don't measure. For example, when I talk to you about a call center and I share that we answer about 1 million calls a week, if you're an operation, I started to say geek, but operation excellence gentleman or woman, or you will say, what's the time on calls? And we measure that, but we do not operationalize around it. And because of that, we want you as a member service rep on the phone with our members to take the time they need to answer questions. I'll give you an example. Last month, I was in the call center in Winchester, Virginia, and I sat with a member service rep, and she helped an elderly member with a transaction, and then says, so before we hang up, is there anything else I can help you with? And he said, yes. And he said it with such enthusiasm. I thought, great, what's going to be the next question? And she's got his accounts all pulled up and everything and ready to answer the question. And his question is, does the post office still sell stamps by mail? And for a minute, I thought she's going to say, I have no idea. Yes, we're tied to federal government with our department. We serve Department of Defense, so we're tied that way, but we don't know. No, she opens up her browser, types in, does the post office still in a search query, gets the answer and says, actually, they do. And I'm going to send you the link on how you can order stamps via mail from your carrier. And he was so happy and it was just a nice, but she didn't even have a pause in terms of that being like the right thing to do. If we had a metric on how fast she could get people off the phone, I think she would have said, not my job. And she didn't. He had one more question, had something to do with the post office. She was able to answer it and move on. And so I'm really happy that we do that and that we really do treat, it's like your story. You were paying for that with your time and showing people that we respect your time and realize that that's the best we can do for you is make it simple, make it easy, answer your questions, but also making sure on this side that we're operationalizing around the metrics and make it easy for our frontline to do that.
One of the things I was impressed at by several things, but one of the things that really stood out to me is that on the website you have a very clear note that you have 4.5 stars with Trustpilot and 42,822 reviews. I mean, that is like amazing. And I love that it's not perfect, And, when you actually click into it, which a lot of people do these days, you can actually see where there's been an exchange where you've acknowledged, an outage or a challenge and a commitment to try and address it. And, there's a humanity to that, you know, in a regulated business where a checking account is a checking account or a shared draft or, whatever, there's, in some level, these things are the same, available widely, but what isn't widely available is that culture, that belief system, that commitment, and that's part of the magic of that makes the brand distinct. So, talk to us a little bit about that, and I'm sure that that's something you pay attention to, but what are the things behind the scenes that really what are the parts of your culture that you guard to make sure that they continue? And then what are the things and processes and ways you look to the future to continue to evolve to meet the evolving needs of your members?
It's another great question. I will tell you, this is one of those that as I mentioned, our employees all know our member satisfaction. We measure it corporately, we measure it across products, and we measure it across channels. And all that information is shared across the entire credit union. That said, when we look at new members, guess what? You can't experience our service unless you're a member. So we felt like we operationally know all about this, but how do we prove it to somebody who is not a member? So we started the Trustpilot program. Trustpilot's a third party that does the surveying, but we weren't part of that program because we felt like we have our own data. Well, we do, but our data is not visible to anybody. So we started Trustpilot and we turned it on for both the brand and then across 13 products and services and channels. So you could have an interaction with a branch, and that's a channel. Here, call center is a channel, digital is a channel, or a product specifically. Got a mortgage, got a car loan, opened a savings account, et cetera. So we solicit ratings from that, and then the transparency to say, yep, those are going to be visible to people because that's that third party rating that really tells you it's real. So we started that because we talk about service being a differentiator, but how do you prove that to somebody who doesn't bank with you yet? So Trustpilot was part of that. And as you heard me mention earlier on, we look at trust as one of the highest metrics that we measure, but it's very hard to figure out how do you earn trust. What's the thing I could do for Chris that I can also do for 14 other million people that would earn their trust? And that's different depending on what your needs are. So the proof is in the pudding, both in terms of awards that we share. One of the first things for us as a service brand is how do we treat our employees? So we are very intentional about this being a good place to work. We're one of the Fortune best places to work, been on the list for 14 consecutive years. And, we do a lot with that engagement survey data to make sure that our team members are engaged and feel like they truly are making a difference. For us, member service starts with team member engagement and how they're enjoying their jobs and clarity about what their jobs are. And we've seen how that translates into benefits for our members. So Trustpilot's part of that, because that's the visibility for the third party as well as ratings and reviews. And then how we treat our employees is foundational to that. It really is. And then the other part I will say of that is we're very much into value delivery as well. And value is both, yes, it's price and quality. Um, our quality is tied to service. Price is obviously as a nonprofit. We actually have a lot of pricing advantages where we're able to give because we're giving members back their proceeds in terms of dividends, low rates, low fees, et cetera. So we deliver on that. But we also know, I should say, and instead of but, value is a broader equation. If something is very inexpensive, but the quality is bad, you don't really have a value. So for us, that value definition includes speed to service, it includes ease, it includes stress reduction. How did we make this easy for the members? And we try to look at things through that equation. And it's, like I said, price and quality, but it's also defined by your time. And some things you want to be fast. You don't really need to talk to somebody. You just need to find out if this check cleared, if you got this deposit, or how's your credit score doing? And other things, you really need to talk to somebody. You need some help. So we try to make sure operationally we're committed to this hybrid model where we call it physical, which is physical and digital together, where we've got our so that's a big part of what makes us different to bank with. So I think a lot of those little things make a big difference. And hopefully, and we do see this and hear this from our members, is that it feels different when you bank with us. And, that's always one of the biggest compliments. When I think about our charter, we were founded, as I mentioned, 92 years ago, but by 7 sailors. And over time, we've expanded our field of membership to include, every branch of service. So from the name, you can guess Navy, Federal, Navy and Marines are the same branch of service. And then we expanded to include all branches of service and then all veterans. Originally, we were only veterans that were receiving a pension, so still on the payroll for the DoD. But we expanded it to be all veterans. So anybody that served as little as 4 years. So if you left with an honorable discharge, you're eligible for service, as well as your family. So when we look at the United States as a whole, about 45% of all adults are eligible to join. So I've got some
Right.
work to do. We don't have
Yeah.
a 45% share, so lots of those people. And I will also say that in this climate, there's some economic uncertainty. There's definitely the K economy where we're serving both sides of the income. Purpose matters. And I think the fact that we have such a strong purpose and values and mission, and if you really respect the military and value what they did and what they do for us, it's easy to see what that is. Our tagline, our members are the mission, I think is very clear. Our members are the mission. That's what matters here. And that is part of the brand. So, all of those things I think combine together to really help us create a very powerful brand here.
Love it. I've worked throughout my career with financial services, brands, banks, and I've honestly never worked with a credit union, although we bank with a credit union. I'm a Michigan State graduate, and Michigan State has a credit union, and they hooked me early, and we've stayed with them for a long, long time. The Financial services, one of the things that I've always, as you know, when I put my strategic hat on, that I always think about is how do you pair all of the thinking back to the base human behavioral context. And one of the things I've always thought a lot about is how stress is in everyone's life and it's unavoidable. I often get a grin when you see a headline or something that says avoid stress. Well, can't. I mean, it's not possible. I mean, you can minimize it. You certainly put yourself in positions that are less stressful, but it's inevitable. And in fact, there's a great book, The Upside of Stress, where the scientist validates through a very scientific process that stress is unavoidable and it's a great fuel for moving us forward, right? It's if you use it right, if you if it, and the problem is moving from inactivity to activity. Now, getting to the financial realm, um, sadly, one of the number one stressors in Americans' lives, and probably true for the world, is financial stress. Um, and working with a partner that cares and understands that and meets you where you are and has the right product mix and the right service kind of culture can make a massive difference. Understands your life stage, and how you can progress and plan for the future without it being a stereotypical ad of the 70-year-old on a beach with a cup of coffee. I mean, I think that the tropes of financial marketing are, pretty common, right? But talk to us a little bit about how your brand and the culture pays attention to that for your members and helps them with their financial stress.
Well, we pay attention to it because we pay attention what matters to that member. So we will define, yes, we have marketing segmentation and we do that. We use marketing segmentation for a lot of our marketing efforts. But from a strategic perspective across the credit union, we define our members and our prospects by battleground. So it might not surprise you when you know about our heritage and our founding, but battleground one, and it is job one, is active duty. And if you know anything about the military, you might be like, well, how is that job one? That's a relatively small population. It is who we were founded to serve, and it is who we really, and every year that population, new people come in who show up to serve, and people leave. So the overall population isn't growing, but it is growing in that new people show up to serve every year. So we try to make sure, and we've got branches at across the street from West Point, on base at the Naval Academy, across from the bases. We have 183 locations that are either on base or across the street from the base. And that's because of Battleground One. And let's show up and serve them in a big way. They do have unique needs. They do life at a faster clip. They tend to um, serve earlier, get married earlier, have families earlier, and have a lot of responsibilities early. So we try to make sure our team members understand their unique challenges. They will PCS, permanent change of station, which is moving more than the U.S. Public. We've done an entire pathway on how do we help them through that process. Sometimes their biggest parts of moving isn't financial. It is about what do I do and how do I do this and how should I address? It's more of a how and how do we feel them, to your point, feel take away some of the stress behind the move and show that we understand some of the stresses that come with that move and show up and say, how can we help you? So we have our call center has people that are dedicated and trained to the unique aspects of that. Also, that's not easy to do operationally because each branch of service has its own specifics on how it works and what they do and what they expect for those that are PCSing them and their families. So for us, Battleground 1 is active duty, Battleground 2 is their spouses and their families, and then Battleground 3 for us is veterans. You can be a veteran as early as 22 years old after serving 4 years. You could also be a veteran who has served 30 years and is retiring from a job at the Pentagon. As you can imagine, when you think about those lifestyles, they're very different needs. And so making sure that we're trained to serve that and listen. I have a note on my computer that just reminds, listen loudly, we call it, because I can't know everything about your life, but I can listen to what you need and what you're talking about and the questions you're asking and show up in a way that helps you and serves you. I love that your first credit union was when you went away to college. Go Green, by the way. My son also is a Michigan State grad
Nice.
and was part of the Michigan State Credit Union when he was on campus there. But of course, a Navy Federal Credit Union member as well. So he was a double credit union member. And I do think more people are realizing that credit unions as a whole, and particularly here, have invested in service and both the digital side. Got an app that gets all kinds of ratings, nice rating reviews online, branch locators, so it's easy to find human channel when you need it, as well as the call center. So, credit unions, because they do have a defined field of membership, it's easier, I think, for them to say, let's make sure we understand our members and our prospects' needs versus it being about for everybody. Um, Now, because their family members are all eligible, that does get to a bigger population and somebody who's just related to someone who served, as I am. My father was a Marine and but got married as he got out of the Marines. So I didn't grow up in a Marine family. So our family looked and felt very much like a civilian family, but with a lot of respect for the Marines and what they did, as well as all branches of service. So we make sure that we show up in that same way. And it's little things too from a marketing standpoint. We talk about showing up for the things that matter to you. Yes, it's financial, but sometimes it's about sports. We are the military appreciation partner for the National Hockey League. And we chose hockey because it does really well with veterans. The teams themselves already had a lot of military programs and appreciation for military, so we knew that the values were shared, and it just felt like the right kind of partnership for us. But we don't own a stadium. We don't do naming rights. We're not about owning the neighborhood. We're about being part of the neighborhood and community. So that does manifest some of the decisions we make and how we show up in the various markets where we're at.
Of that. I want to go back to listen loud. I think that's a great call to action, and you know, some of the it doesn't feel like a successories poster, which, you know, is a little performative, right? That's actually like true to your brand and true to your culture, and true to kind of the uh, general military ethos, right? It's really interesting. There's a great saying that I heard recently. I don't know who to attribute it to. It probably has been passed around. It's that we have two ears and one mouth. Use them proportionally. And I thought, what a great way of saying listen to respond in a way that's thoughtful rather than just listening to respond with what you want to say. It's a great thing. Um, eh, Fantastic conversation. I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that's coming or that's actively like on your, you know, thing to share with our listeners that that you're doing for Navy Federal Credit Union that you want people to know?
Well, we are doubling down on our Battleground 3 for veterans. There's a lot of that market that doesn't know that they are eligible to join. And depending on how long ago their service was, you could have individuals that served in the Army and Air Force who were not eligible when they were active duty, but now they're eligible as veterans. So getting in front of them and being very specific about their eligibility is big. We are tracking that through our brand funnel because our brand awareness has grown. And but if you don't know who can join, you might like us, but you may not do anything about it. So we're being very purposeful, and hopefully you'll see it in some work that we're just releasing. We actually released new work August 1st, a new campaign that's very specific to who can join. We also see for us, if you understand eligibility, you like us more too. Your preference is linked to that eligibility, even if you're one of the 55% who can't join. But if you're part of that 45%, it does really impact how you feel about us. So we're doubling down on that. And thankfully, we're building on a very solid foundation. People overall are looking for a value which we deliver against. Service is a point of difference which people value and want to be listened to and heard. So, growing on that foundation, we're really in a nice place to do that. So, I'm very excited about this new work and new chapters and how do we integrate it all and make it as powerful as it can be and should be.
That's great. Uh, and I love the way that, you know, the those that do qualify obviously have a stronger connection and kind of affection for the brand. But I imagine that even those that don't, I know certainly my impression, having never qualified, but always being like aware. I lived in Vienna, Virginia, as I mentioned to you separately in a previous conversation. Certainly aware of the brand, knew I couldn't join, but I thought, you know, thought very favorably of it. You know, because what you do is clear, valuable, and consistent, and you know, inviting more people into it, both able to join and not, and advocating and feeling positively is a really good thing. And, you know, the ability to remove or minimize detractors, you know, as marketers, we think about that kind of stuff a lot, right? You know, you don't want people that would, you know, work against you or suggest otherwise. And I think you guys do a really nice job of that. So congrats. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I want to turn the conversation back to you for a second. So Hollywood just called and they want to do a film about you, a biopic on Pam. What's the name of the film, or who's going to play you, or what's the plot or theme?
It's a great question. I had to think a little bit about this one, and this is a very bad title, so it probably would go to an editor for a better version. But I'm torn between Purpose Matters or The Power of We, Not Me. And, I don't know how many people are listening to this podcast that are in marketing roles that you have ever sat down and thought about, "What do you do alone?" And I think that list is very short. I even think about simple things for us in terms of updates for the website. That takes a writer, it takes someone that knows AEM, takes compliance to approve it. So, what we think are simple, but I also feel strongly that we do better when we bring our diverse teams, diverse mindsets, to the mission. And here, that's really important because we also serve a diverse field. So that's why I talk about the power of we, not me. And there's times when there's some humbling things there where it's like, that's not really me, but it really is this person. We have a director of military affairs, and he's one of the first people that I went to and showed rough cuts for the new spots. Not because he's a marketing guru, but because he understands military. And we have a military advisor on all of our shoots. We make sure that we're getting all the details right because that's how our members know that we'll get their details right. But when you think about the marketing, my first approval phrase wouldn't normally be that you went and shared your stuff with that person. And, my heart was full when we showed some of the last round work that we just released, and, one of the spots really kind of follows somebody through their service career, and, our director of military affairs, who's a former Blue Angel, distinguished Navy career, and, has had a very successful career out in the civilian world as well. He looked at it and he said, "This is me." And I said, "That's exactly what I wanted people to feel. So thank you, thank you." So that's really nice. I would have Meryl Streep play me because I think she is talented. I think she's smart. She has played a lot of diverse roles. So I think I would see if her casting agent would see if she was into the power of we, not me.
That's great. Oh, that film will be a hit and Golden Globe winner or whatever the awards are. That's I'm not an awards person, so I probably just botched that. um, so Pam, those that want to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way to find you?
Well, I'm one of the last people still on X at PG Piligian, last name Piligian. I'm also on LinkedIn, and Piligian's a relatively unique name, so you'll be able to find me there on LinkedIn. And so look forward to hearing from some of the listeners.
Fantastic. Pam, thank you for all that you've shared. I know our listeners are going to enjoy this episode tremendously. And with that, we're going to sign off on this episode of Beyond the Brief with Pam. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chris. This was great fun.
All right.